Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with host Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please subscribe and share so you never miss an episode. Search for us on your favorite podcast app, or you can find the podcast on jimmyhinton.org and findingahealingplace.com. Please rate our show, subscribe, and share so we can spread the word. If you would like to support us and get exclusive rewards, go to patreon.com/speakingout. Find a tier that best fits you and join as a patron of the podcast. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast with hosts Jimmy Hinton
and Jimmy's mom, Clara.
Okay, today's episode. Well, first of all, let's back up a little bit, not get ahead of ourselves. Thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. We have 40 patrons right now. We would love to have more. We love our patrons. Our patrons are the backbone of this podcast. They are our friends. Our patrons receive benefits each month. Mm-hmm. They get exclusive podcasts that only they can listen to. At the top tier, they get a chance to be on the podcast and be guests. We've had some incredible guests.
We have.
And we would just love to increase that number because we love our family. You guys are awesome.
And we are so thankful for you. Without your support, both emotional and financial, as well as your prayers, we would not be able to come to you like we do each week. So
absolutely.
We thank you. Yes.
Okay, so this week's topic: can we save children by posting on social media? Kind of a rhetorical question.
Yes, it is. And Jimmy and I were discussing this prior to the podcast today and why we feel this topic is so important. Jimmy, why don't you take it from there and explain a little bit of why this is kind of a heavy spot on your heart right now, on both of our hearts right now.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say a big part of the inspiration for this topic came from one of our patrons, Kelly Downing. She has an incredible podcast, and if you have not subscribed to Survivor Sanctuary, run out there and do it. Survivor Sanctuary is an incredible podcast. Kelly does a tremendous job with that, and she just she has a really good speaking voice, and I could just listen to Kelly forever. So I'm going to put that plug in there. But
shout out for Kelly and a big thank you to Kelly.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So Kelly recently did an episode on Survivor Sanctuary about hashtag Save the Children and why hashtag Save the Children kind of bothers her by seeing so many people post that. I thought it was really good. She's not saying hashtag Save the Children is inherently bad, but that there are people who are posting under the hashtag Save the Children, and they're politicizing it and saying that if you belong to this political party, know that they don't care about hashtag Save the Children. Mm-hmm. And it's complete nonsense. We know that abuse happens in every denomination, every religious denomination, every political party, every socioeconomic status that somebody is in. It happens everywhere. Right. Okay. So this whole idea of hashtag Save the Children has become really popular among people who otherwise have never posted about child abuse before. Now, all of a sudden, there are these big heroes who are coming in and posting articles on saving the children. And she was just kind of calling that out. And I think in a very respectful manner. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was really important. The other thing that Kelly brought up, which really caught my attention, is this idea of fake articles going around under hashtag Save the Children. And one of those was, you remember recently the Wayfair thing that Wayfair, they were selling cabinets and different things with people's names, and the price was really high. The price point was high for some of these pieces of furniture. And so somebody theorized that those must not be pieces of furniture, but they're actually children who are being trafficked on Wayfair's website. And this gained a lot of traction. A lot of people are posting about it. In fact, I personally received several emails from people saying, "Hey, are you and Clara going to talk about Wayfair trafficking these children on their website? We think this is horrible, and we would love for you to talk about that." And I just politely declined because it's total garbage. It's not true. It is absolutely a myth. It's been debunked. It is there's zero legitimacy to this whatsoever.
It's interesting, Jimmy, when you're saying that, how once we hear someone say that, we go, oh, wow, I was duped again. It happened to me again. I got in a situation like that last week where I posted an article and it was not all true. There was truth in it, but it wasn't all true. Unfortunately, I didn't do enough homework to see that. And man, oh day, some people let me have it. Others, of course, began sharing it. It was shared like 45 times in just a few minutes. And then I felt terrible because I only had a half truth. It happens to us. And sadly, this is a state in which we live right now.
Yeah. And I think what drives that is people see these absurd stories and they just want to share it, and they want to get the information out there because, my goodness, it's so despicable.
Right.
And so I think we're really reactive because seemingly, and I emphasize that, seemingly, there is a mountain of abuse that's happening everywhere, and all of our kids are at like a level 10 risk. And most of the school teachers out there are pedophiles, and most preachers that are out there are dishonest and they're pedophiles.
If you just tuned in, by the way, Jimmy said seemingly. This is not, he is not stating a fact.
No.
Yeah.
But that's the perception.
Yeah. Right.
When people are reactive. And the same is true of, Black Lives Matter. This is the other thing too. They're a terrorist organization and, all this stuff. The organization itself, I think there are a lot of problems. And I'm not going to get into Black Lives Matter because that's not the point of this episode. Right. But my point is this. Seemingly, everywhere Black Lives Matter protests take place, entire cities catch fire and buildings get looted and, all this stuff, which is horrible. And I'm not defending looting whatsoever. I'm not defending violence whatsoever. But Boz Javidian posted an article on Twitter, I think it was yesterday. And the title of the article was, an independent analysis shows that 93% of Black Lives Matter protests are peaceful.
I saw that.
And he put his caption as facts matter.
Right.
Well, he's absolutely right. He's right that facts matter, because what happens is there are a handful of agitators, and there's enough that I think it's horrific, and I think it needs to be squelched and taken care of. I am absolutely not condoning any kind of violence or looting or public defacing of buildings. Those are people's personal property. I think it's horrific that people do it. I've heard people excuse that. Well, you don't know how much anger is inside of them. Okay, great. Then destroy your own property. Don't destroy your neighbors. So anyway, that's just kind of my personal stance. But the point is this. I think that it can seem like things are much worse than they actually are. And we get emotionally reactive. And in doing so, we call people to our cause when our cause is limited to posting articles on Facebook and Twitter. And what I mean by that is we begin shaming people and coercing people into sharing articles. In fact, this whole Wayfair thing, I saw people saying, if you don't repost this, I'm unfriending you. And I'm like, okay,
Really?
then unfriend me.
Really?
Because I'm not reposting a fake article that does more damage to children who are actually being trafficked So we need to be careful to not let the emotions get the best of us to where we're skewing the facts and making it seem like everybody's an abuser.
It's really hard, Jimmy, because when we are on fire for something, when we're excited about something, when we read that news clip, we see that headline and it agrees with how we're thinking and what we believe in. I fall into that category. I'm quick to want to share it with the world and say, see, I told you this is what's happening. This is what this group believes. This is how wrong they were. This is what we have to do. And it's not always so. So we need to be very careful that we don't get sucked into that because it's easy, believe me,
It
for
really
that
is.
to happen. It is.
Because you see an article and, you see, and this is another thing that's been bothering me too, is these articles that are being shared all over Facebook now. They're showing pictures of kids that are badly beaten up.
Right. Oh, yes.
I've not dug deep into this, but I suspect that a lot of those photos are probably photoshopped or were professional, like kids in a studio where they put makeup on and, made it look like they were beat up. And that's dishonest, number one. Clearly they're trying to elicit this emotional response by posting pictures of these kids that are just, badly beaten and bruised. But also, I would venture to guess that there are probably a portion of those photographs that are actually real, which is equally, if not worse, than the Photoshop doctored photos, because these are actual kids who've been beaten, whose faces are now all over the internet, and now you're posting their face for a cause, and so you're exploiting a child who's already been badly abused and beaten. And that kid's face is going to be out there forever. Once it's out on the internet, it's forever. And I know if any of my kids were, God forbid, abducted or abused in any way, or beaten or sexually abused, I'll be danged if I would want their picture all over the internet for the whole world, and for people to use my kid's picture to say,
that's the danger.
if you don't repost this, then I'm going to unfriend you, calling people to a cause. So, our point is this in this episode, it is reposting, posting and reposting. Is doing that on social media actually saving kids? I would argue not.
Right.
I would argue all it's doing is spreading, not all, most of what it's doing is spreading misinformation. It's getting a whole bunch of people fired up about they don't even know what. There's so much misinformation on human trafficking right now because everybody wants to attach a human sex trafficking label to every form of abuse. And another case in point, going back to Boz, he posted another article about this U.S. Marshal bust in Georgia. There were 39 children who were legitimately rescued by the U.S. Marshals, but there were some news outlets that were advertising this as 39 human trafficked children
That's
were
still
rescued.
going around. That's being circulated as of this morning.
Yeah, and it's just not true.
Yeah,
It is not true.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the truth. And so Boz's point to that was, you're doing more damage to the cause to actually rescue and save children when you're spreading this kind of misinformation.
What's
in these
the answer
lies.
for us, Jimmy? Do we want to bring awareness? We want to bring truthful awareness to everyone as to what does go on in the world of abuse for children. And we need to do that, but we don't want to be part of all the falsehood that's going on and the hype and the false hype. So where's the balance, or what's the remedy?
Well, balance is the key word. Yeah, balance is the key word. There has to be balance because, we want to raise awareness. Certainly.
We
absolutely.
have to.
100%.
Correct.
We need to raise awareness.
Right.
This should be an ongoing conversation, the conversation of abuse and even human sex trafficking. We need to be talking about these things. I can just say personally, I'm very slow to share articles, even when they're from reputable media outlets, because unless that article was written by an investigative journalist, a lot of these people just they regurgitate these articles from the original author, and they don't fact check them. And all media outlets are guilty of this, all of them. So they'll have a reporter who contacts the original author and says, "Hey, can I share this over at AP or wherever?" And the original author will give permission, and then that article gets identical article gets posted. It just gets rebranded with that newspaper's.
Well, it gets spun in a different way, in a different tone, in a different light.
Yeah, they might reword a little bit of it, but for the most part, it's verbatim.
Right.
Yeah.
But the way it's presented is presented in a different way. And I have been, I've been sucked in so many times. It's not even funny, thinking that what I'm reading is true when only part of what I'm reading is true. And unless we know the real facts, we can't help a situation. We really can't.
And we make it worse. I mean, we exacerbate the problem, and we create paranoia, and balance is lost.
Right.
So, my personal philosophy is I am very slow to share articles online, because at the end of the day, that becomes this endless abyss, and trying to fact check and trying to figure out, okay, is this article actually factual, or is this from an author who got it wrong or got some of the facts wrong? And even if all the facts are right, even if all the facts are true, those articles are incredibly time consuming to read and to sift through and to process and to emotionally process. Intellectually, emotionally, you have to process these articles. And we could spend all of our time doing nothing more than reading and posting these articles. And so at the end of the day, my philosophy is sharing a whole bunch of articles on abuse doesn't actually do anything to slow down or to stop abuse. It may raise some level of awareness, but my personal method is, if I share an article, I usually let it stand the test of time. So you may see me post an article 3 or 4 days after the article was written, because I kind of wait to see how it's playing out on social media, not to see if it's popular, but to see if it's true, to see if there are any victims in the story who speak up and say, "Hey, I was one of those victims, and this story is in fact true." I think allowing an article to stand the test of time is really important. Okay, so that's number one. I am very slow to post articles about abuse online. If you follow me on social media, you won't see me posting bunches of articles on child abuse. And then the second part of that is, my philosophy is to actually produce something myself that will be beneficial to others. And hence this podcast, for one.
Right. Exactly. And your blogs.
And the blogs.
Right.
The blogs aren't just an avenue to vent.
No.
It's a way to share what I feel is valuable information that's actually going to help people identify where there's possible abuse and what they can do about it.
Well, I personally know that you do your research before you write a blog post.
Yeah.
That's not just something that, oh, wait a minute, today's blog post day and I'm going to shoot out some words.
Yeah, I never do that.
No. And I know you labor over what is posted.
Yeah.
I appreciate that so much. I think countless others appreciate that. And I get what you're saying about not jumping on board with the most popular article and just, share it with all your friend list. And threaten them. If you don't share this, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. And,
And
all
the other
that.
assumptions, if you
Yeah.
don't share this,
Right.
you don't care about
That
children.
you don't care
Bull
about
crap.
this topic. Right.
Yeah. That's just total bull crap.
Right.
So I think, a better way is, if you see somebody who's in need, if you see somebody who's struggling, if you see somebody who it appears that they're in an abusive situation, do something about it.
Right.
You don't have to post that on social media. And that's the other thing. You and I, this person may come to mind when I say this. I'm not going to mention a name because it just came to mind. And I'm not about calling people out for stuff like this, but it was a post probably a couple years ago about somebody who took a picture with somebody who he helped on the side of the road and gave this big elaborate story about how he came to happen upon this person who was in dire straits, and this person was homeless or whatever the situation was. And it was like this big long story with all of these details. And I'm like, how humiliating to that person who was laying on the side of the road and just was down on his luck and just needed somebody to reach out a hand and help them. But you had to up the ante and talk about it on social media and talk about all the circumstances about how the Lord led you to that person. And it was just this really bizarre,
that personal pat on your own back. We're admonished, don't even let your left hand know what your right hand does.
Right.
Do your good deeds and just do them in the name of our Lord God Almighty and let it be. That's all. Do them in the name of love and God and Christ. And that's it. We don't need to broadcast that all over the place. That is of no good.
Well, here's another example. There was all this stuff. Apparently it was, people cared about it a couple years ago when it was convenient, but all these kids that were in cages at the border, right?
Right.
That was, it's all you ever heard. And
again,
there was the coercion online. If you're not posting articles about kids in cages and you're an evangelical Christian, you don't really care about children. Do you know I never posted anything about kids being separated from their parents at the border? Never. I never posted one article. You know why? Because I never personally took a trip down to the border to help kids or to see for myself what was actually going on. So I never post. It's not because I don't care about kids. It's not because I don't have compassion on kids who are being separated from their parents at the border. Absolutely, I have. I think it's horrific. And these policies have been going on for multiple presidencies. It didn't just start with the current president. So, I'm usually really slow to post articles because by posting these articles, it increases this amount of hysteria from people who aren't actually boots on the ground.
I know what you're saying also, Jimmy, and I hope that our listeners take this the way it was meant, because I include myself in this also. Often, by sharing an article, we feel like I've done my part today.
Yes.
I did it.
Yeah.
I did what I was supposed to do. In contrast to when I see that child who has that look in their eyes, like they are pleading for some kind of help, either it be from abuse, neglect, being hungry, whatever, that I don't do something. And there's a big difference.
Yeah.
Every day, I do believe God allows us to be presented with multiple situations where we can use our talents and abilities, our money, our time, our resources to help. And that's where we should be doing quietly, not broadcasting it all over. We don't need to. Just as the situation arises, do what we can. Now, does that mean, okay, we should never share another article? We can't share anything except Jimmy's blog post because we know they're true, no, not at all. But we need to get unwrapped from the idea that when I click share, I've done my part.
Yeah.
And often you're right.
Yes.
That could be doing more harm than good if we don't have the whole of the truth
Yeah.
before us.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, bottom line, fact check. If you're going to share articles, make sure that you fact check. Number two, don't intimidate, threaten, coerce, shame people who are not sharing the same articles that you share. Because at the end of the day, not all people are on Facebook to be justice
Right.
warriors.
Yeah.
Some people just are on Facebook or Twitter because they want to keep up with friends and family.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's okay.
Yeah. It is.
There is
Yes.
nothing in the world wrong with that. If that's their personal
Right.
reason for being on social media, give them a break.
Right.
It doesn't mean that they don't care about kids. It doesn't mean that they don't care about people who are being abused and trafficked and all these horrific things. It just may mean that they're on social media rarely, much less often than some of us are. And they come on to check up on family and to share a couple pictures of kitties in baskets and like that.
Flowers
Yeah,
and gardening
and that may be why they're there, and that's
recipes
okay. So
yeah. Right.
yeah, so I would say be quick to fact check. Be quick to step in and help when need arises.
Right.
You have not arrived when you press share. That is not.
Right.
Mom is absolutely right. You have not arrived as soon as you click share. That it's not like, oh, job is done. So I'd say, those couple things: be quick to fact check, be quick to step into action, and be slow to shame and coerce other people for not sharing the post that you share. And if somebody shares a post that you disagree with, or if which is going to happen pretty often, somebody shares an article that is completely bogus, like the Wayfair garbage that was going around, you don't have to go in and correct every single person and offer your opinion. I usually just quietly move on because this stuff will die out. Unless somebody's actually being the boots on the ground and they're in there doing the hard work of rescuing children, it's not going to do me a whole lot of good to correct them every time they post an article that's total bullcrap, because these articles are highly what's the word I'm looking for? Trendy.
Right.
And so they will rise and fall like everything else. But the one thing that is consistent is when there are people who are doing the hard work of saving children, that work never stops and it never slows down, and it's always consistent, and they're just out there doing their thing, and they're not looking for accolades. They're not looking for pats on the back. They're just out there doing their thing. And
I think you spoke a few thoughts prior to this about when our emotions are tugged at by seeing pictures of that affects pretty much everyone. When you see a child who is hurting and your immediate response is, I need to tell the world about this. I need to do something. And so we click share without checking, thinking that, wow, I need to get word out. We need to help that child. So we get it. We get why we share. We just, put that caution out there. Be more careful and be more concerned about doing something of legitimacy rather than just sharing an article. Right in our own communities, we have numerous things that come up daily where we can do something to help children of abuse. And sometimes it's just giving a child a smile. It could be as simple as that, or just building them up a little, or letting them know in some way you are a safe place for them to talk, anything like that. So we need to find more avenues to help that way, where there is really legitimacy to what we're doing.
Yeah, and I would say it's okay to feel these emotional reactions. We should feel emotional reactions to seeing horrific pictures or reading horrific articles or whatever it is. But I would say that if you're stirred to action, and you're looking for something to do and you feel
Mhm.
kind of pent up, like, I don't know what to do. And I think that's part of it too. People
It
don't know
is.
what
We
to
don't
do.
know what
So
to do sometimes.
the
Right.
most logical thing is, well, I'll just reshare this article
Mhm.
and hope somebody out there will
Right.
hear this and do something. So if you're stirred to action, I would say don't let that feeling subside. I would say
Mhm.
go down to your courthouse or call your district attorney and say, "Hey, I know that abuse is happening in this town. Is there
Mhm.
anything that you need? Is there anything that
Mhm.
I can do to
Mhm.
personally help?" Or go down to a child advocacy center,
Right.
um, and just ask them, "Is there anything that I can do to help you guys?" Um, I read an article and I just, I was
Mhm.
stirred and I feel like I want to be doing something. How can I help?
There are women's shelters throughout cities in the United States, especially where people have fled abusive situations. There are occasions I know where we can help there to things like that we can do. And, we can hands on do something
And there are
that will help.
detectives who specialize in sex crimes
Right.
who are really processing heavy stuff every minute of every day.
Mhm.
It never leaves their mind. The stuff that they hear and
Yeah.
see and witness, um, they are constantly processing. And the suicide rate among police officers
Mhm.
and detectives who are working sex crimes with children, especially, is really high. So
Mhm.
maybe just a trip down to your local police department and just shake a hand and say thank you. Find the sex crimes detectives,
Yes.
shake their hands and say thank you.
Deliver a
And that's it.
pizza, deliver a cold drink, do something like that. It means the world when encouraging.
Yeah,
It truly does.
absolutely. Well, we will leave you with this truth bomb for today. Try not to be overreactive. When you see somebody in trouble, help them. Sharing more articles on social media doesn't translate to more children being saved. So find somebody in front of you, somebody who's struggling, somebody who needs your help, and just simply help them. I promise you'll make the world a much safer place that way. Well, thank you for tuning into this episode, and we'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. If you found it helpful, please follow on Spreaker and search for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. If you believe in what we do, consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron. And check out the cool rewards our patrons receive. Share with your friends and tell the world. Join us in speaking out on sex abuse so we can change the tides and prevent abuse.